Good morning.
Um,
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Terumos. Perek Hey, we are in Halacha Aleph. We are actually in middle of the Mishnah. We're going to start on Daf Memvav Amud Aleph all the way on top of the Amid. Let's quickly go back that the general din of this Mishnah is the Mishnah is talking about when one mixes Truma and Cholin, or when Truma got mixed with Cholin. So we already learned in the previous chapters the ratio needed midrabanan of 100 to 1. What this Mishnah adds to the equation is that one of the two were tamei. So we had cases where you did have the ratio so far, and when you didn't have the ratio. Cases where the truma was tameya, the chulin was tahira, or opposite cases where the truman was tahira and the chulin is tamei. And let's quickly review the general dinim that we need to remember for this Mishnah, that for something tamei, for foods that are tamei, for them to be able to convey tuma to other foods, for those other foods to acquire the tuma, there are two prerequisites. Number one, that the food that's tamei, that's conveying, has to have the size of a kibetza or more. If that food has less than that size, it cannot convey tuma, and the foods that might be acquiring tuma have to become mukhshard lekabel tuma, which means that they needed to become wet with one of the 7 liquids, and if they did not, then they will also not acquire tuma, even if they have halachic contact with foods that are tamei in the size of a kibetza or more. Another very important rule that we learned in the beginning of this Mishnah is the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim regarding the law of ta'ale. That means that when you have the ratio of 100 to 1, still we say, just as an example, if one saw of truma falls into 100 saw of chulin, even though it's not meduma, it became nullified, but the owner cannot eat the whole 101 because one is truma, doesn't belong to him. So he has to remove ta'ale, he has to remove a saw. Rabbi Eliezer, amazing, holds that the saw that the owner removes is truma. In other words, using the words of Rabbi Eliezer, sha'ani yoimer, that saw shenafla, he saw sha'alsa. We say that this is the one. Is it likely? No. Is it possible? Yes. Did we learn last week cases where we know it's not even possible? Yes. But in principle, we say that this is the one that came out. The Chachamim argue with Rabbi Eliezer, and they say that really the usa'ah that you are removing doesn't begin as truma. Really, it's chulin. The Chachamim confer on that saw the status of truma. There is a status of truma midrabanan. Why? Because the Chachamim feel that if the person won't view that saw as truma, he might not remove it. Sometimes people could become lax, wrongfully so, but people can become lax when it comes to financial, but the same people will be more careful when it comes to Isser Veheter. So the Chachamim said, no, we're going to view it as if it's truma, but it's not really truma. And there's going to be many nafkaminas in consequence, between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim, as we'll get to when we unpackage the sugya. Now we're going to start today by having more scenarios of these mixtures, truma and chulin, as we will see in a moment. Yeah, ratio, no ratio, which one is tamei? And we're going to conclude the Mishnah. And what the Gemara will do on today's daf, on daf Memvav, is ultimately come back to the opening case of the Mishnah. The opening case of the Mishnah was where the truma was tamei, the chulin was tahar. You don't have the ratio, and since it's not nullified, so the status of the truma goes into the entire mixture. Yet the Mishnah says that yirkavu, that everything has to be left to decay. Everything has to be left to rot, and that's a problem, because what we keep on saying is that truma that's tamei, of course, may not be eaten, but you not only should you burn it, but the kohen is allowed to derive benefit when it is being burnt. That's not called leaving it to decay. It's muter bahana. You can use it as fuel. You can put it to warm up food. You can warm up your house with it. So that will be the issue. Why is it Yirkavu? And indeed, we're going to have, the Gemara is going to quote various opinions in the Tanoim as to what to do with Truma Tameya. On top of that, various opinions of Amoyroim in those Tanoim. And all of that will be brought back to our Mishnah, explaining why does the Mishnah say, indeed, that Yirkavu in the first case of the Mishnah. That's going to be today's daf. Let's go right inside. Daf Memvav Amid Aleph, all the way on top of the Amid. Says the Mishnah that if you have a saw of Truma Tohira, Shenafla Lemeya Chulin Tameim, that they fell into 100. So the ratio for bittul you have. In this case, unlike the immediate previous case, in this case, the truma is the tohira and the chulin is tamei. And I want to add something that just continuing from the last case for people who remember or do not, that here also we must be speaking about a scenario where the truma was not yet mukhshar. Okay? Now, what do you need to do, Aviv? Step number one is you have one saw of truma tohira, it falls into 100 saw of truma of chulin tameim. You have to remove a saw, right? Even though it's nullified, you got to remove a saw. So ta'ale. And now the question is, how are we to treat that one saw that you removed? What's the issue? Well, we're going to speak it out both according to Rabbi Eliezer and according to the Chachamim. But let's begin with the Chachamim. The Chachamim don't say that the saw that fell in is the saw that you're taking out, which means that which you are taking out is really a mixture between Truma and Chulin. I know the Truma is nullified, but still, we confer on the Ta'ale, the status of Truma. But it's not Truma, it's Truma and Chulin. Problem is, right now, the truma that fell in was not yet mukhshar. But when you turn grain into flour, into dough, so you add water, I know you don't have to add water. You can do it with fruit juice, as we learned before in the Mishnah. The problem will be, we don't want to make the truma in it tamei. That is the issue. So what should you do? So tala, and you can eat it. You don't have to destroy it. You don't have to destroy it. But how do you eat it? Either nekudim. The kudim again means that you turn this saw into very, very small bilkalach, very small loaves of bread. Each loaf of bread is less than the size of a kibetza. So even though you're adding water into the flour, so the truma flour is becoming mukshir, so what? Even though the chulin flour is tamei, so what? In order for something tamei, food, in order for food that's tamei to impart tuma, it has to have the size of a kibetza. So when you make the whole little, you got it, the whole loaf is less than a kibetza, no issue. Or koloyos, who says you have to turn it into a dough. If you toast the grains, then it will never become mukshir. Or as we learned before, this is the third time already, or make large loaves, but don't use water or any other of the 7 liquids. Only use.
You mind if I take a picture of your dog?
No.
Only use juices. And or the final, or you take other flour, chulin, that's tahar, and you want to make larva. A guy says, I don't want to have small bilkalach, I want to have nice big loaves. Pseder. So make big loaves, use 95% from your other normal chulin tart flour, add from this a little bit to complement. So again, from this mixture, you'll never have more than a kibetza. You can mix it with the water and you can make the large loaves. All of these are just eitzes for you not to run into the problem of creating the truma in it, creating tuma on otherwise what it was truma tohira.
Those bigger than a pizza, but why do you have only a pizza? Or less? Just said.
All the options, either make smaller than a kibetza, or make it with fruit juice, or toast it, or mix it with other flour. Okay, now look inside the top Marafolda. All the Marafolda wants to speak out is that this Mishnah, the top Marafolda, that saw In other words, you can argue, one second, according to Rabbi Eliezer, why don't you have to burn it? Of course not. Because the first case of the Mishnah was where the Truma was Tameya. Here, the Truma is Tahoira. Truma Tameya has to be burnt. Rabbi Eliezer says that the saw that you removed is the saw that fell in. I got it. If the Truma fell in, then what you removed has to be burnt. The good thing here is that even Rabbi Eliezer, the saw that fell in was Tahoira. The saw that you are removing is Tahoira. So it remains Tahoira. According to the Chachamim, it's Avada. Not a problem, right? The Chachamim B'chlal say that we don't say the saw that you are removing is the same saw. But what are we saying? That on one hand, for the dinim of a kohen cannot eat its bottle and a chanami. But on the other hand, since you have to remove a saw, you can't say that this saw is mamish chulin. We don't do that. Even the Chachamim, the rabbis conferred on it the din of truma. So now you got a problem. Now that they conferred on it the din of truma, we do want to take into account that the truma started to hoida. In it, there's chulin tameya, and that's the solution. Okay. And now, beginning with the Gemara. So the opening case of the Mishnah was where, first of all, like we said, the Mishnah gave 3 cases where you did not have the ratio. So it became meduma. What happens with meduma is that the status of the truma affects the status of the whole pile. So a non-kohen cannot eat the whole pile. And the case of the Mishnah, the new chiddush of this Pedic was, the first case is that the tsa'ah was tameya. A saw of truma tameya fell into less than 100 saw of chulin tohoirin. So the Mishnah says, yirkavu, that you have to let the whole thing decay. And like we spoke out, that's really problematic. Because even though the truma is not bottle, and I get it, the truma's tummy. Before this truma got mixed into anything, the known opinion, I know we're going to learn today new opinions that are less known from a Tana, but the regular opinion is that you take truma tameya and you get to burn it and you get to derive benefit while you're burning it. You don't have to leave it decay. You can have hana from it. There is some value to that. Instead of throwing it in a log, you're throwing a loaf of bread. Or under the fire, they used to throw fuel the whole time. So instead of straw, you have the truma, and you are allowed to do it. In other words, why is it worse? I get it. It's not bottle, so everything has the status of truma tameya. So what? Truma tameya should not have to be yid kavud. That's going to be the Gemara's kasha. But to build up to it, we're going to start learning a lot of information. So first of all, Tani Rabbi Chia. The Gemara begins with the Braisa. The Braisa says that the law of bittul, that when you have 100 against the 1, the truma is bottle, doesn't only apply if the 100 is rectified chulin. It's across the board. Even if the 100 is tevel, maybe a person would think, maybe tevel is different. No, it doesn't matter. Truma is nullified if it fell into non-truma with a ratio of 100 times more than it. I know our Mishnah is speaking about chulin, but if it's tevel, it's also male. Sviche shvius, no, tevel is something that no one can eat prior to rectifying it. Sviche shvius, for those of us who learned Masechta Shvius, so there's many different scenarios. I mean, we also learned that generally there is a rabbinic prohibition b'chlal to eat after growths. But it doesn't only mean after growths. It means any product of shvius. There's always issues with products of shvius. Even when you can eat it, we learned it has kedusha, which means you can't do business with it, which means you cannot take it out of the Holy Land, which means that if this is a product that at some point is no longer to be found out there in the wild, when that happens, even though you have what you are allowed to have in your house, you have to do you have to be mafked it, you have to take it out of your house. Right, called biur, however you understand biur. So the same thing, if you have 1 saw of truma, and it fell into 100 saw of sviche shvius, says the Braisa, taught by Rabbi Chia, we say the same halacha. That what? That it's nullified. So first of all, that's chiddush number 1. Chiddush number 2 is that, okay, it's nullified, but we learned that even when there is bittul, you have to remove 1 saw. What did we learn in our Mishnah? That when you remove this 1 saw, like in the case of our Mishnah, it's truma, it's chulin, you got to deal with it. So let me go to the case of tevel. If I am a Yisrael, I have a 100 saw of tevel. Into it falls a saw of truma. So at least there was a ratio of 100 to 1. I am removing one saw. What do I need to do with this one saw? Well, I have to give it to a kohen, but not shitas Rabbi Eliezer. Not Rabbi Eliezer says when the kohen gets it, it's truma. It's not tevel. He can eat it. We don't say that. We don't say that exactly what fell in came out. We actually say, the Chachamim say, maybe what you took out was all of it was tevel. So you have to rectify the tevel. Now, don't forget, you're giving it to a kohen. So how do you rectify this tevel? So the Braisa is going to say, you can rectify this tevel from it itself and give it all to the kohen. What would that mean? So I'm taking a saw and I'm saying that 1/50th, 2% of it is truma in it on the right. You know, we learned before that not everyone says that just verbal declaration is enough. You have to actually designate a place. Okay, so on the top part of the pile, 2%. That's on the tzofin of the top of the pile, in the north of the keli, is truma. Then you declare 10% on the southern part of the pile is my sedition. Now the beauty is that a kohen is also a Levi. Kohen can eat my sedition. Not only that, you can give my sedition to a kohen. There was actually a time, certainly in the beginning of Zman Bayesheni, according to some, throughout Zman Bayesheni, that Ezra HaSofer penalized the Levium to the point where everyone gave my sedition only to the kohen, because the Levium did not return to the Holy Land when he wanted them to return. So, but the Vadai can give it to the kohen. Now, let's go further. We're following the Shita of, I think, Elazar ben Gamla, Abba Elazar ben Gamla, that the Yisrael owner can separate Trumas Meiser from the Meiserishin. So the Yisrael is saying 10% on the left is Meiserishin. From the Meiserishin, I'm designating 10% of that to the kohen. The other 10% is Meiser Sheni. And I'm redeeming the Meiser Sheni. He'll have to redeem it. That the owner will have to do. And then he gives that entire saw to the kohen. That's what Rabbi is saying. That if it was the case where the Truma fell into 100 soft hevel, so Male, you do have to do the Male. But now you're giving the kohen tevel. You can't give him tevel. You got to give the kohen what he would have gotten. He would have gotten Truma. Truma, when he got the Truma, he would have eaten the whole saw. It's not fair for you to give the kohen something that's not a real replacement, right? You got to give it, you have to replace it. So replace it. So what do you do is, the way we explained, and through that, all of the saw that you gave to the kohen, he'll be able to eat. Some of it will be the truma. Some of it will be the meiserishin. Some of it will be trumas meiser. And the rest of it will be chulin or truma, not tevel. So I said that he has to separate the Meiser Sheni, and then the Yisrael will say that the 10% of what remained, right? Because like we learned, you give 2%, so then Meiser Rishon is from 9.8, and then the Meiser Sheni, the quantity is 8.8 from the saw, and then the Yisrael says that the value of 8.8 of the Meiser Sheni plus a halachic fifth is redeemed on the coins that I have in my pocket that I have to take to Yerushalmi, Midi Yisrael. So now that it's Meiser Sheni Shenivdu, now it's back to Chulin. Just like if I own Meiser Sheni, I can redeem it. And now what happens in the second case of the Tana Rabchia, where the Truma fell into 100 saw of Svichei Shvi'is, so here you can't rectify it. You have to do Mala. It's always Malin. Okay, but again, Rabbi Eliezer, what do we say, Aviv? That the saw that you took out, that's the saw of Truma. So you're good to go. We don't pass, the Chachamim don't hold like Rabbi Eliezer. When you are removing the one saw to give to the Kohen, we're going to say that, listen, mitzad the halach of Truma, mitzad that the Truma was nullified. Mitzad, another angle, what I'm giving to the Kohen, could be some of it is Truma, some of it is Svichei Shvi'is, could be all of it is Svichei Shvi'is, so you have to treat it like Svichei Shvi'is. So one of the dinim, or the din that Rabbi is emphasizing, it's not the only din. Svichei Shvias, I just said you can't do business with it. That he doesn't have to say. That everyone knows. Svichei Shvias, you may not remove from the Holy Land. That everyone knows. What he's reminding us is a din that we had in Masechta Shvias, that Yinosnu Malin v'Yinosnu le'oichleim. V'Yinosnu le'oichleim means that the kohen, the recipient, must share it with other kohanim in this case. Now, what does it mean? He has to share it with other kohanim, because even according to the Chachamim, rabbinically, we treat the saw like truma. But it's also svichei shvius. One of the dinim of svichei shvius is that the recipient of svichim is not allowed to thank the one who gave it to him. You know why? Because by God's law, everything that grows in the Holy Land on Shvius is hefker, belonging to everyone. So even though it grew in my field, I'm not allowed to guard my field. So if I ended up taking for me the small amount that I'm allowed, and I have a neighbor, and I have a chaver, and I give it to my chaver, if you will thank me, it somehow shows that ich bin the Greisa Balabas, and you're thanking me for the toiva. We hold you can't even say thank you, because it wasn't mine to give it to you. So based on that, there's another rule. If I give a person svichei shvius, that we learned to Masechta Shvius, look in the Marav folder, the last narrow line, and then going under the Gemara, Perek Tes of Shvius, that if someone gets a large amount of svichei shvius, he gives an example. B'Yerusha, if someone gets a large amount, don't eat it on your own. Invite other people to eat it with you. At least if many people eat it, that means if I will not be eating the large amount, I'm not going to end up thanking the one that gave it to me. In our case, if the kohen who's getting a saw is a large amount, if he will not share it with other people, he's going to thank the Yisrael that gave it to him. Now, when a kohen gets truma, he does thank the Yisrael. You know why? Because even though I'm a Yisrael, I don't own my truma. God gave me the right to choose what kohen to give it to. So when I give truma to my kohen, he says thank you. No problem. Svichei shvius, any product of shvius that if I end up giving to the other is not allowed to say thank you. And if I give him a large amount, if he gets a large amount, the meaning of yinosnu le'oichlei means it should be divided amongst many eaters. So the same rule will apply over here. Bottom line is, the first thing is that what Rabbi is being mechadesh is that the din of bittul, that you need the ratio of 100 to 1, is not limited to chulin. It applies to tevel. It applies to svichei shvius. Elamai, you got to remember the halachas of tevel. You got to remember the halachas of svichei shvius, and you have to act accordingly. Now hold on. Now let's continue. Amar Rabbi Yosi. Says Rabbi Yosi, this is the Amoida Rabbi Yosi. That now that we learned that befedish in a braisa, our Mishnah also alludes, our Mishnah is merames to that din. One of the cases that we had in the Mishnah was when you had the saw of truma. That again, the first case. We're going back to the first case of the Mishnah. We're going to come to the yirkavu, and there the truma was tamei, and it fell into less than 100 chulin. That is tahar. Okay, so one of the things the Mishnah said is that, and one of the cases the Mishnah gave is that it fell into my sedition. So since it's not nullified, yirkavu. So what does that imply? That why yirkavu? Mepnei pachas mimeya. Which means if it would have fell into 100, now the Mishnah also gave a case of my sedition. You see, my sedition is not chulin. My sedition has to have trumas meiser removed from it. If it would have fallen to 100, then we wouldn't have said yirkavu. What is always the rule? If it is batal, kala. Hold on. How can you just remove one and give it to the kohen? That's not right. You know why it's not right? Because my sedition, vis-a-vis anyone eating it, even a Levi, even a kohen, is tevel for trumas meiser. Can't eat my sedition without removing trumas meiser. V'loi tevel hu? Is araya and a chanami. Even though it's in a state of tevel, still, the rule of the ratio of 100 to 1 is always there. So that's a raya to the opening part, to the chiddush of the Braisa of Rabbi. And now, let's go weiter. Tanan taninon. So we are beginning now. It's all about the yirkavu. We are quoting over here a Mishnah Masechtas Tamura. This Mishnah is also brought down in other areas in Shas. In the Babli, it's brought down in Psachim, Babli Psachim, Daf Lamed Gimel. But the Mishnah in Tamura writes that Madlikin bepas ubeshemen shel Truma. The Mishnah there is speaking about Truma that's Tamei. When Truma is Tahar, Ushmartem, we have to guard it, we have to consume it in its usual way. There we're speaking about dafke, bread, the Mishnah speaks about, or oil of Truma that became Tamei. So the Mishnah writes that Madlikin, the word Madlikin doesn't mean Yisrafu. You know, when it says in the Mishnah, then you burn it. You know, it can mean like burn the chametz. It doesn't mean you can derive benefit. Madlikin, the word Madlikin also means to put it on fire. But that word means you get to use it. You can't eat it. How do you use it? I said either for fuel to warm up your food or to warm up your house or any type of energy. Madlikin means you can derive hana when you get rid of it by burning it. That's a Mishnah. Now, Chizkiya Amar, that you know why the Mishnah only gives you a mashal of pas and shemen? Because leishanu ella pas v'shemen. Ha shar kol hadvarim, but other items, if they're truma and they become tamei, you may not derive benefit at all. In other words, what has to happen? Yirkavu, look inside the end of the Amud in the Marafulda, 3 lines before the bottom. Why is that? According to Chizkiah, because the chayshinan litakala sheyoichlum. In other words, Pas and Shemen explains the Marafulda, since when it becomes tamei, it's not uncommon for people to use bread for fuel. Again, we're living in a whole new world. Today we have gas, but in the good old days where you didn't have gas, and also remember that bread at some point becomes difficult to eat, right? There were certain yeshivas in Lubavitch where they would wait 3 days and then they would give the bread to the bachrim because of iskafia. Verstehst? Not to have fresh bread. But if you would wait 6 days, you know, bread is something that it becomes unusual, and that's what they did. Everyone had that minute. When bread becomes inedible because it's too hard, they would throw it into the fireplace. They would use it as fuel. Oil is also used for fuel. Not only that, we learned that also in other halachas in Masechta Shabbos, that a utensil, which was normally an earthenware utensil, that held oil that already burnt, you know what happens to that? It becomes like black and filled with soot. So when you refill a fire lamp with oil, that oil becomes inedible. When you throw bread into the ashes of your fireplace, aside of the fact that the bread was already old, now it becomes filled with ashes. In other words, bread and oil, since people commonly use it for fuel, once it's truma and it's tamei, what would you do? Even if you don't need to burn it right now, you would put it in where it will be burnt. So it becomes ma'us. It becomes disgusting to be consumed. And we're not afraid that the kohen inadvertently will forget that it's tamei and will eat it. I'm reading inside the Marafulda. Masha Enkin, when it comes to all other foods, understands Chizkiah, where people commonly did not use it for fuel. So you're not going to throw it in the fireplace, but you're going to put it in a bag, and you're going to remember that this is Truma Tameya. Next time I'm going to go light a bonfire, I'm going to throw it in there. You might forget, you might eat it. And that's the way Chizkiah understands the Mishnah. Rabbi Yechanan argues, guys, the end of Memvav Amud Aleph, Rabbi Yechanan, Aman Loi Shanya. And the Mishnah gave you an example of Pas and Shemen, but really there is no difference. He Pas, he Shemen, and he Sha'ar, Kol HaDvarim, according to Rabbi Yechanan, the rule that Truma Tameya, which may not be eaten, is allowed to be benefited thereof by the kohen while he's burning it, even though other foods are normally not burnt at all. It's not a problem, because since the Torah prohibits the kohen from eating Truma that's Tamei, the Torah does not prohibit the kohen from having Hana'ah. And we're not worried that someone will eat it by mistake. Everyone understands, that it's truma tameya. No one will do it. It's so chamer. Says the Gemara that Rabbi Yuden kaput koyam boye. Here again, boy in the Yerushalmi doesn't mean a question, which is what it always means in the Babli. Here, boy means he makes a statement that chitim kepas and zeisim kishemen. In other words, Rabbi Yudan agrees with Rabbi Yechanan. As that's the way we will learn Pshat in Rabbi Yudan. Look inside the top Marafulda. Chitin kepas, dinam kepas umuter, v'chein zeisim, kishemen umuter lekula almem. Gewaldig. Okay. Now, he brings the Marafulda brings that other people did not understand that in Rabbi Yudan Kaput Ka. Maybe he was also only speaking about chitin and zeisim because they also could become ma'os. But anyways, let's go with a simple pshat over here. So we have Chizki on one side, and we have Rabbi Yechanan and Rabbi Yudan Kaput Ka on the other side. Now, says the Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman, here is the key, not Rabbi Yechanan. That changes everything. Rabbi Yonason, my friends, is a Tana. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman tells us a Tana that Hamadlik, even bepas shel truma, even if you have bread, which is commonly used as fuel, not because it's tamei stam, when you have old bread, that if trumas tamei, the Tana Rabbi Yonason holds, one is not allowed to derive any benefit from it. You're not allowed to use it as fuel. And he put a curse. And he says, whoever, we're speaking about a kohen who's going to use a tamei pas of truma, tamei, yisarfu atzmoisav, may his bones be burnt. Oh, so at least I'm saying we're coming back all to our Mishnah's Yirkavu. So at least now we found a Tana, which is not a known Tana, Rabbi Yonason, not a known opinion, that Truma, Tameya, even the Pas and the Shemen may not be used.
Bones don't burn. What does that mean?
Maybe you are minimizing his curse. Very nice. Kavan had a good point. We just said that when God forbid, Rahman al-Islam, when people from their ignorance, when they do cremation, what they get back is not ashes. They don't get back ashes. Is that they burn the body, God forbid. And then the bones don't burn. So they grind up the bones.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the greatest evil perpetrated against a human being. And it says in Kabbalah that the tsar that a person feels when they are burnt alive, which is horrendous, that is the tsar that they afflict to the neshama. That's why our enemies, intuitively, who wanted to hurt us, Hitler and the others, that's what they do. And today it's tragic because there's ignorance. No one is doing it from riches. I hope. They're doing it to make money. It doesn't help the environment. It's a mishugas that came into the world. It doesn't do anything good. It makes those people a few dollars extra. That's all it is. It's not even cheaper. Now, says the Gemara, Rab Shmuel bar Nachman boy come Rabbi Yochanan. So he asked him, halacha l'maaseh. Rab Shmuel bar Nachman was a kohen. Maula hadlik. Okay, you hear such a curse. Okay, I have truma, that's tamei. He's not even going according to Chizkiah. He was talking about pas. Can I use it for fuel? So Amalei, Rabbi Yechanan says, Adleik, now you have to know what he meant. Adleik, you are allowed to use it as fuel. And then he tells him, Uma de nafel l'shiftach nafalach. That which will happen to your tribe members will happen to you. How do you understand that, Rabbi? No, what was his concern? His concern is that he heard there's one opinion. We don't paskin like him. But he says that if you use it for fuel, you're going to get burnt. May your bones get burnt. All of the Kohanim used it for fuel. So Rabbi Yechanan told him that, first of all, we don't paskin like Rabbi Yonason. You can use it as fuel. But Nistama, he was thinking, right, Rab Shmuel bar Nachman, but I don't want to get the curse. So he tells him, listen, all of your tribe members, if there is a curse, then all of them are cursed. So whatever will happen to them will happen to you. In other words, if you're going to be together with everyone else, that in itself mitigates the concern. Person says, I'm going to Gehenim. If all of my chavedim are in Gehenim, not that it's going to be a fun ride, it's already better. It's an interesting way of saying, don't be worried. And if you are worried, so it's not you are worried. Your whole tribe should be worried.
The same thing with the sukkah wall that we talked about yesterday.
That everyone, very good.
Yeah.
No, it's once everyone is doing it. Don't be concerned. That's
yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't know if that's a Chazal's expression. Look inside the Marafulda, the way he understood it. Right, the last line above the Gemara. Uma de nafal shiftacha nafalach koloimer. Uma oynish sheyala l'chol shifatecha yiga gam kein l'cha. In other words, even if there's going to be an oynish, well, everyone is getting punished anyways. She'einat yachid b'davar zeh. Don't think that you're unique. Shekol hashevut nehagim bo yeter. Now, Zok the Gemara, Hakol moedim b'shemen. Now we're going more. Even though Rabbi Yonason, right? Rabbi Yonason said Hamadlik bepas shel truma. He gave a curse. So now the Gemara is saying beautiful. Why didn't Rabbi Yonason use both examples that we had in the Mishnah and Tamura? The Mishnah and Tamura said pas and shemen. Now he argues with the Mishnah, no question. But if he would have argued entirely with the Mishnah, he should have said Hamadlik bepas. You see, that's the thing with the gears. I know that here we have the word v'shemen, but we have it in parentheses. Really, Rabbi Yonason never mentioned oil. So the Gemara is saying something beautiful. That even Rabbi Yonason is moedem that using truma oil that became tamei as fuel, even that is mutter. Wow. The Amar Rabba Barchia b'shem Rabbi Yochanan, that when it says in Parshas Koirach, l'cho nisatim l'mashcha, and this is a word that we use, if you remember, whoever's learning Zvachim now, I think on Daf HaYomi, right, in Zvachim and Menachas, when we're learning in Kachim, that all of consecrated meat has to be eaten l'mashcha. So there we touch ligedula. In other words, l'mashcha means to anoint. What does it mean to anoint? It means that when you get something holy, you will think about it, Aviv. You're getting in the Beis HaMikdash, right? We'll have a Beis HaMikdash. And there's going to be a piece of a carbon, a steak. Can I add spices? This better words. The Gabbai is sleeping now. Other words, Aviv is here, not Aviv. Eran. Eran is just as good as a chef like the Gabbai, and the Gabbai is not here to argue with him. Can you add condiments that are not consecrated to the food? One might have thought you can't. What are you mixing unholy? But you could. You know why you could? Because when a king eats a steak, he doesn't eat stam a steak the way I eat a steak. He adds to it ketchup, an American king. Over here, the ketchup. You can add whatever it is that you think that's making the food better. That's the meaning of l'mashcha. It also means that eat it when you're reclining. When something is holy, if it's a mitzvah to eat it, don't view eating as, okay, it's a necessity, chaplap. Eat it the way a king eats it. Give chashivos. So by the way, just which exactly how we eat Shabbos and Yantav. During the week, it's klipas noiga. Shabbos, it's a mitzvah. Yantav, it's a mitzvah. But l'mashcha means many things. So l'mashcha, and by the way, that pasuk is speaking about truma, but and bikurim. We are applying it even to kachim, but the dear truma. What does it mean? L'mashcha. L'mashcha means ligedula. Ligedula means, like we said, that you can add wine, you can add oil, you can add honey, you can add condiments, you can add spices, or even though they're not consecrated, add it to your truma to make the truma tastier. L'mashcha means the pshat. What does l'mashcha mean? L'sicha, that you can use the oil for anointing. L'mashcha means you can use it lahatlaka. So now you have a big chiddush. The most commonly oil, you know what oil is made for? Oil is made for anointing. That is the most normal use of oil. It's called olive oil. But Mela, why is it Rabbi Yonason so you can't burn it? Because the Torah says you have to guard the truma. You have to treat it with respect. I get it. Bread is not something you use for fuel. You use bread for fuel when the bread is inedible. When it's edible, the right way of consuming bread is by eating it. Oil is the only exception. Since oil is lechatchila to be used for anointing, so and for fuel, that's lahadlaka. People use oil lahadlaka. People use oil to kindle a fire. So when it's tamei, even Rabbi Yonason will be moedem that you can use it and have hana from it. So now we have all of the shitas. You got it? So first of all, we have a fakerta Mishnah in Tamura that you are allowed to have hana. Elama, the Mishnah says pas and shemen. So we have the machlekes. Let's go Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan. We have that. We have now the Tana Rabbi Yonason that says a curse for someone who has hana when they burn pas of truma temeya. And now the Gemara is saying, okay, first of all, we don't paskan like him, and even according to Rabbi Yonason, it's only on bread. But even he will be moida that if you have oil that's tamei, you can't eat it. You are allowed to use it and have hana from it. Now all of this is to understand our Mishnah. This is Gavaldik. So what's the case of our Mishnah? I have one soft truma temeya, and it fell into less than 100 chulin tohoiden, less. So it's not nullified. When it's not nullified, what does it mean it's not nullified? That we have to view the entire pile as if it's truma. I'm not saying the whole thing, but truma is everywhere famished. It's meduma in it. It's mixed up in it. Okay. So if the whole thing is truma, why yirkavu? So now the Gemara begins to go through. So nicha, I understand that that tohoiden yirkavu, if the truma is tamei, and the case where the non-truma was tahar, this for sure, everything has to be left to burn to. Now you think, what are you talking about? Why is that nicha? Why is that nicha? Why? Just because the chulin is tied, everything is good. Anu chap now. So look inside the marafulda, and for the first time inside, we're going to learn the ha'aras maharap, whoever he was. So the marafulda says the marafulda, right? The 7 lines from the bottom. If the truma temeya fell amongst less than 100 of chulin tohin and give a halv cup, she'asur lisraif truma tohira. That we know. No one allows you to burn truma tohira. So what? So he says gavaldik. He says when the truma temeya falls into chulin tohirin, listen to these words. Since it's not 100, what do we say? We say that the status of truma goes on everything. But not that the status of truma temeya, the truma doesn't go on everything because the chulin is tar. So we view the mixture, listen to my words, as a mixture of truma tohoira and truma temeya. This is great. This is so good. This is a new thing. When truma temeya, 1 saw, falls into 90 saw, 99 saw of chulin tohoira. It's not bottle. Okay, so the status of truma goes on everything, but there's one wrinkle that we never thought about. Not pshat that the status of truma temeya goes on everything. No one told you that. The status of truma goes on everything, but the everything that was chulin is tahar to start. That which is tamei is tamei. So we have to look at this meduma as a mixture of truma temeya with truma tahira. What do you do with that? Think about physically. If I have truma tohoira and truma temeya, what do you do with this? You can't say burn it as fuel because I am not allowed to burn truma tohoira as fuel. Truma temeya I have to eat. I can't eat it because some of it is tamei. In that mixture, everything has to be let to decay. The problem is that the Mishnah's case isn't only when the truma was temeya and the chulin was tohoira. The Mishnah is also speaking about a case where the truma was temeya. It fell into less than 100 chulin temeyin. Here also yirkavu. That has to be explained. So we ready? So again, nicha. This is beautiful. When the chulin was tohirin, that's already nicha. It's amazing how they didn't have to explain it. We needed to learn the noise kelim yirkavu. Problem is the Mishnah is also speaking about where there is less than the ratio of 100 to 1. The truma was temeyim. The chulin, the 99 or the 90 or the 10, I don't care, less than 100 of chulin was temeim, yirkavu, bitmiyah. How does that work? So here let's divide it good. Al data the chizkiya oichet good. Why? Because chizkiya limits the permit of madlikin to only pas v'shemen. Our Mishnah did not speak about pas v'shemen. You know what our Mishnah spoke about? Let's speak about grain. Our Mishnah is speaking about other items. So al data the chizkiya vayte nicher yirkavu. Because our Mishnah is speaking to anything other than bread and oil. And enachanami. If it was bread or oil, then yisraf, then you can have anah. According to Rabbi Yechanan, that says befedish, and according to the Yerushalmi, that Rabbi Yudan kaput ka'a agrees with Rabbi Yechanan that everything may you can have benefit from everything. So that's the kasha question mark on the case of chulin truma temeya in chulin temeim. So answers the Gemara that Sava Rabbi Yechanan kadod Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina, and he says something beautiful. When a person has truma temeya, what does he do with it? He gives it to the kohen, whatever the kohen can do with it. Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina holds that you don't have to burn it right away. you can leave it to decay with your kavana, with your hope that at some point someone accidentally will add more chulin onto it. So if I have a mixture, some truma tameya, the truma tameya you're gonna burn. You're gonna have ano or not have ano. But if I have truma tameya that fell into chulin and I don't have the ratio, I know that if you add to the ratio of 100 b'meizid midrabanan, it doesn't even help. But if b'shoigeg more chulin falls into it, what were to happen then? Everything gets rectified. Then we learn the details in the Mishnah. So that he holds that a person is allowed to leave a mixture. You are allowed to do it to decay with your kavana of Shema Yimso Behem Aliyah. Maybe you'll have the good fortune that at some point someone is going to add more chulin to hit the ratio of 100 to 1. How great is that?
You get a little kid under age that do it the shogeg.
I just think whenever you have a very large pile of food in your house, the way people would store foods, today everything is boxes, everything is disposable. I think it was common for foods to be joined together. No, it's even though you know that there's a likelihood in your setting, the way you store food, that it's going to be added, you are allowed to do it. So in other words, yirkavu does not mean you have to yirkavu. It just means that you are allowed to wait for it to become batul. And on that, we have many more nuances that will continue, God willing, in next year. Guys, next year will be, God willing, Friday morning.